Peasant Productions presents the Math of ESP, why it works even if you don't believe in it. And again, trying to keep it in the 15-minute time cycle so it's easy to digest, and at the same time showing you how this was allowed to happen, okay? As I pointed out, when 50s and 60s it was SO2, a coal and diesel fuel and gasoline emissions issue, and then you had 1971, the USA became a petrodollar, and everything relied on the sale of petroleum product and petroleum and getting oil out of the ground itself and actually controlling the crude oil market by the United States government, corporation, military complex, okay? You had this whole reversal of everything, and from the 70s on, it's always CO2. Now, you have the same thing happening everywhere else. 9/11 just happened. There are still people who rant and rave that you can't deny the governments, the governments are correct. Politicians are only crooked when they work for the other side. My politicians are honest. Funny, I've never yet met a politician that did not have a slimy background. Every last one of them, you check into them, something dirty went on somewhere, to the point of even Bernie, like I said, the guy was obviously a stagehand shill for everybody that was going to want a whole new party type of thing to go chasing after. But he so quickly started telling his people that for your safety, stay inside, don't be out in public, which is totally anti-revolution, anti-change. So Bernie was never anybody trying to make change. He was for lack of a better word, a pacifier, like you give a baby to shut it up, and nothing more. What's happening? Well, let's go back in history, okay? England, the British Empire, the sun never set on. What did they do? They went out and they conquered the world with their military might. They turned little third world countries, for lack of any opinion other than, oh, they're third world. We're first world and they're third world. You then sit there and you run a lot of stuff about how wonderful England is. And you get lots and lots of people, lots of immigrants to come to your country, United States. Literally, from the 1900s on, the beginning of the movie era, all you see is America the Great, America the Great. We're wonderful, we're beautiful, we're fantastic. And what are they doing? They were building an economic empire for themselves, the elite rich. Okay? Rockefeller came into power basically in the late 1800s with his oil business and his Standard Oil. And Standard Oil, if you look, was actually in Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, negotiating for oil leases in the early 1900s, before you have the two world wars. And during the two world wars, yeah, there was all kinds of stuff. Halliburton was actually negotiating leases during World War II. 1943, they were discussing what properties the United States would have control over as long as those countries did what the United States said. So military might was used by the United States. Previous to that, England, military might was used. Okay, in both cases, they have got all these immigrants to come in, and then suddenly, as their little empire starts toppling, because when you have somebody sitting there and constantly eating, and they don't ever get up from the table. They got a porta potty under their butt, and they got servants bringing food to them, and they got servants clearing away the porta potty for them, type of stuff. They don't produce anything, okay? Therefore, they are literally, like I say, the United States is an importer country. It needs these other countries to send food and supplies and materials to it. You have this person sitting there and it needs people to bring stuff to it. So you hire very cheap, pathetic little people to do this, or people you treat as very cheap, pathetic people. And then when you have enough of them, You start screaming that immigrants are bad and you need to shut all the borders down so that nobody comes in. Germany, before World War II, you had the same thing. World War I, you had the same thing. You had these people starting to talk isolationism and wrapping walls around their countries, whether either militarily or with actual physical walls like Donald Trump, okay? You have this incredible illogical behavior, okay? The United States, it doesn't have any wall between Canada and the United States. There's literally thousands upon thousands of miles where you could just kind of sneak through and go on across, okay? Therefore, putting up a wall in Mexico and having two coastlines and a northern border that is totally open, anybody can cross it, anybody can fly a balloon over it, anybody can hop in a glider and you know, at 50 feet above the trees or below radar and just scoot on across. So you are illogically told that you have to have this stuff. It's called fear. What else do you do with fear? You start having a lot of stuff going on where always in the news, somebody getting shot, somebody getting hurt, somebody getting robbed, and you constantly escalate it up so that people get more and more afraid. In the 70s, we were pretty cool with one another. In the late 70s, it was actually a public song called Nobody Walks in L.A., and it was very obvious wandering around L.A., 79, 80, 81, that people were literally, you know, shutting down, putting up walls, isolating themselves within themselves as the government intended. Fear, 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 okay? And now what do you have? Everywhere you look, you have, you know, people like Donald Trump jumping up and down, and Donald Trump supporters jumping up and down, saying, fear everything, only we can tell you the truth, it's all fake news, only us are truthful. If they were truthful, they wouldn't care who else you looked at. Like I said, I work with gods, and I'm not the slightest bit afraid of anybody challenging me. I will admit when I make mistakes, like for instance I made the comment that, you know, there were a bunch of passports and now it appears in the news there's only one was ever found. But a passport that would have been on the body of a hijacker, therefore possibly literally in the middle of the fiery explosion and got killed and his body totally destroyed, his passport isn't scathed in his paper. But jet engines that weigh a couple of tons and are made to take temperatures in the 3,000 range, 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit range, which is a blue flame and above, a blue to white flame. Yeah, there's no blue flame on those towers. There's no point in time when anything exceeded an open burning pile of kerosene, an open pile of diesel fuel, an open pile of jet fuel, which is kerosene with a little bit of naphthene, I think I said that right, naphthene added into it to keep it from literally gelling at high altitude cold. Okay? It is nothing more than kerosene, folks. Kerosene you use in lamps. Kerosene is used all over the place. Kerosene can be used to start a campfire and burn your, you know, run your little kerosene lamps and on up and down and around and everything else that's going on, okay? There is too much going on that is fake about what that was. But the people are more interested in the government position. Why? Because the government won't come in to attack your tax. You know, and all this kind of stuff. They won't come and challenge you for the right to have your property. They won't, you know, they won't do stuff to make your life miserable. The police won't come around and harass you because you're the wrong person. They don't like you. You know. So that's what I say. You got to really stop and look at the actual actions that are going on. Look at what kind of movies and TV shows are put out. Look at how much the people are being dumbed down. And then look at history and see how many corporate government military complexes did that in the past, used that system. You can go all the way back to the Romans and continue on back through history, probably a good, you know, 5,000 to 8,000 years of governmental systems that went out and preached, you have to fear everybody but us. Yeah. So that's why I say, you look at this and you see this good supply of cheap labor. The United States is not going to shove all the Mexicans out of town. They're not going to send all the Japanese and Italians and Irish and Germans back, because they're all a part of what's going on. Okay? The Japanese got sent to internment camps on the West Coast, but you never saw East Coast Germans being locked up and thrown in concentration camps, did you? So, see how easy it is to take something that is visibly different. An Oriental person is much different than a white European person visually, right as you're walking up along them in the streets. So it was very easy to just run around and grab anything of a different color. Same thing with Mexicans now. Donald Trump can scream about Mexicans, and everybody knows, hey, Mexicans are stupid, and Mexicans are drug addicts, and Mexicans, those wetbacks who come across, they're doing nothing but coming here to steal from us. What are all those corporations doing in places like China where there are no environmental rules, using them to produce stuff to come back here and sell in America for high dollar? Like I said, Apple, the richest computer company right now, produces its product in China, which then gets shipped to Mexico, Philippines, and Vietnam for assembly into product. The product then gets shipped to America and sold in America for high dollar, while they were using penny ante, cheap labor in all those other countries. Okay, it's disgusting. You think Apple's a good people when they make a phone that is deliberately built so you cannot change the battery? Their computers are built so you cannot get inside them and do much of any kind of work on them. You have to send them to an Apple authorized person who pays a fee to be Apple authorized, okay? And all that. And you just have this whole series of stuff where you are literally led by the nose and violated. The whole decline and fall of nations is what this is about, as history shows. And something why I am not paranoid about talking about this stuff. I have a brother, a half-brother, not a total brother. His dad is somebody else. He was my stepdad. So this half-brother of mine is somebody that I have been around most of my life. For 30 years we have traded computer technology and secrets and ideas and stuff like that. About 20 years ago, he went to work for one of the military complexes, okay, Northrop Grumman, the people who make the big B-1 bomber. He's working as a computer IT technical specialist. He walks into extremely secure rooms. He is, by rule of military and U.S. government, totally investigated all the way down to they probably know when he clips his toenails. All of his family, including me, have been under surveillance for basically roughly 20 years. 20 years ago, 1998-99 is when I had a judge literally stand there on the bench in a courtroom with probably some 200 people in the room and tell me that, Mr. Vanderhoof, I don't like you. I'm the judge. This is my courtroom. You have no human rights whatsoever. You have no legal rights whatsoever. You will never be allowed to enter any evidence against your ex-wife because I don't like you, and by blip, 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 you're going to do what I say. Yeah. Interesting. The same point in time the government is investigating me, all of the higher end of who I was contacting started telling me that, hey, shove it up your butt, you don't have any human rights. And 25 years after I got told I had no human rights in 1993, and I had no legal right whatsoever to protect my son, who was just 2 years, well, yeah, a little over 2 years old. I had no legal right to protect my son from child abuse and attempted murder by the mother or anyone in any court position or any other situation. I was not allowed to prosecute anybody. The victim has a right to decide who and what gets prosecuted. The United States government tells you, oh, no, no, no. The United States government is always the final word. They decide who is violated and who is not. Yeah. Somebody runs up and says, fear everything, fear, 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 it's paranoia time.